Thank you. Shri Suresh Prabhu.
Sir,
You have 5 minutes.
thank you, sir. Sir,
More than enough.
our foreign policy has never been as controversial as it is now, because in the past, we rarely used to discuss foreign policy on partisan lines. We always believed that foreign policy is that of a nation, that of a country, and therefore each one of us who are constituent of that nation will subscribe to that policy because that's in the best of national interest. Unfortunately, we have seen lately that we are debating it on partisan line, creating a sectarian atmosphere, as a result of which it is not serving the nation as it should be. And therefore I think it is the best interest of the country that foreign policy should be discussed, debated with almost all the constituents of the country, representing all the political parties, and then only we should arrive at a consensus which should be reflected in the positions that we take at the international arena, so to avoid a division that appears to have taken place within the country. And that therefore my request is that government in future must take all political parties, all shades of opinion into confidence before shaping a policy and taking a decision and position in international arena. Sir, nowadays we are knowing about a foreign policy through newspapers, and not only the opposition members, but also when I was listening to the statement of the leader of the House, Mr. Pranab Mukherjee, he also seems to be knowing about what's happening in international arena through newspapers. He said there has been a deal which is likely to take place between Russia and Iran, and he said this is what I am saying on basis of newspaper reports. Sir, our Defence Minister of India, member of the Cabinet Committee on Security, very senior politician, leader of the House, should know about what's happening in international arena only through the newspapers. So it seems that our media has better access to what's happening worldwide than our leader of the House. That speaks really sorry for this. So therefore, it is not the opposition who has the prerogative of only knowing from the media, but also seems to be the leader of the House. So therefore, I think now we should know about foreign policy, not through media, but what is discussed, debated between the different political groups should be reported in the media. And therefore, I would first request is that let us take everybody into confidence. Sir, it is already, I was listening very carefully, and therefore I decided to speak to the statement, the intervention of our Defence Minister, who spoke very eloquently on various aspects of it. Sir, I genuinely believe that the friends of a country can keep changing. So it's a dynamic world. Our India is now one of the fastest growing economies of the world. We are 1 billion people, 1 billion plus people, and therefore I don't think anybody can cow us down. And therefore I genuinely believe that we should take our decisions on foreign policy in the national interest. And in any case, the foreign policy is only a manifestation of our domestic policy. It's only an extension of what we'd like to do in India. Therefore, what is happening in foreign policy should be a reflection of that. And therefore, I believe, as Chanakya had said way back, who is one of the founders of foreign policy of the world, principles of foreign policy of the world, he had said that interests are permanent, and therefore, if our interests are permanent with somebody, it keeps changing, we can always take position. It has to be in the national interest, undoubtedly. But my request to Mr. Pranab Mukherjee would have been, Honorable Leader of the Opposition, would have been to spell out what was that national interest which really forced us to take a decision in the IEA meeting referring Iran's case to the United Nations Security Council. So it is not just saying camouflaging our decision in the garb of saying that it was in the national interest. It is really imperative for us to know what was that specific national interest which compelled the government to take that decision. If we know about it, I am sure all of us will support it, and therefore what is that national interest needs to be spelled out very clearly. So second question that really comes to my mind is that when the Iran issue was referred from IEA to the United Nations Security Council, so what was that threshold that Iran had reached which compelled it to be referred to the United Nations Security Council? So what was that threshold is not properly explained by the intervention, and therefore I would request, and I'm sure, sir, I think, sir, the debate which is going to be continuing for some time, the reply to that will be given by the Honorable Prime Minister, who is holding the foreign portfolio with him, realizing the importance of it. So I'm sure he'll be able to respond to it. And when he responds to it, I would really like to know what was that threshold which was reached. And now, when it will report to United Nations Security Council, what are the options that are there with us? In any case, India has been trying to be a member of United Nations Security Council, permanent member, but it's not a member of that. So what role we can play now, having referred it to United Nations Security Council? Are we still feeling that there is a room for diplomacy? And if so, on what lines it is progressing? That is something I'm sure we like to be knowing from the Prime Minister when he replies, and also about what is the action that is going to be taking place. Sir, the Honorable Leader of House mentioned about one more point. He said Mr. E. Ahmad, the Minister of State for External Affairs, called on the President, His Excellency, the President of Iran, and he said it transpired that Iran seems to be quite well disposed towards India even after this vote. So I was very glad to know that. But this is our version. I would like to know whether the Iranian government has issued any official statement confirming this by saying that Iran also believes in continuing with relations with India, and if so, I would like to know what now is the status of our ongoing negotiations with Iran on various oil-related issues, whether it's a pipeline, whether it's supply of natural gas. What is the relationship as it's going to take place now? I would really like to know. Sir, thirdly, we have the Honorable Leader of House mentioned very important point that India is a very responsible country, and we have always taken a position. And during the time when Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee was the Prime Minister of India in 1998, we took a considered decision to go nuclear weaponized state for a simple reason, because that was in the best interest of India, and we realized that to have a credible deterrent, it is going to really help India, because in our backyard and even in the front yard, we have got countries who could be posing threat to India using nuclear weapons. So nuclear deterrent was considered to be the best bet possible to protect India's national interest, and therefore we did it. Sir, and therefore he mentioned very correctly that this is India's stated position, subscribed now more or less by all the parties in the country. Sir, in that case, if Iran tomorrow decides to take a similar position and says that would like to be weaponized for a simple reason, because that's in the best interest of Iran to create a nuclear deterrent which will help in their national interest, what would be the India's government point of view?
Yes,
I would really like to know from the government. Sir, one more issue. North Korea is likely to be also one of the case similar to Iran, because North Korea has professed that they also have similar position. There is a dialogue going on. Suppose a similar situation develop, which compelled government of India to vote against in United Nations in IEF meeting on Iran issue. In a similar situation develop, what will the India stand in relation to the North Korea? Sir, I would like to know. And sir, there are two issues, and I will end. Sir, only two issues. One, sir, India has been for a long period of time saying that we want the world a peaceful world. We want a world which is nuclear-free world. We believe that nuclear weapons should not destroy humanity, as we have seen in some part of the world. So now, in the changed scenario, is Government of India thinking of pursuing this bigger picture, the laudable objective of making sure that the world becomes a real nuclear-free world? If so, whether that agenda is spelled out, because as we correctly have taken a position that we are opposed to NPT, because it is totally biased, it is totally flawed, and therefore we oppose it. But at the same time, in absence of that, are we pursuing some agenda? It is something I would like to know. And sir, the Prime Minister has been saying, and which I agree, that India doesn't want any more nuclear state in its backyard. So now, in that position, what does it really mean? Where our backyard extends to, how far we like to go, and what type of territory that we like to cover is something I'm sure I would like to know from the government. And sir, Mr. Upchand Pal started his speech with a very interesting point that a salesman, a management student is not willing, is told that if you can't sell, confuse. And sure, he said that he's really confused. Now I would like to know from him whether you would like to buy the product or you would like to reject the product. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.